Oh my God, this apple creme brulee tart smells so amazingly delicious. Join me today on Simple French Cooking, and I'm going to show you how to make this tart. Incredible. So excited. I'm going to teach you my very favorite apple dessert of all time. It's an apple creme brulee tart. You know, ever since last week's episode where I made beignets aux pommes, or in English it's called French apple fritters. By the way, recipe up there, could be up there. I don't remember how it works on camera. But anyways, ever since last week when I taught you guys how to make beignets aux pommes, I've just been putting apples in everything. And you know, the apples from the beginning of the season are always my favorite apples. They just taste the crispest, juiciest, sweetest. Anyways, lots of big words. So in France, they call it apple creme brulee tart. They call it Tarte Normande. So Normandy is very well known for the quality of its cream, its butter, apples, obviously Calvados. So this tart kind of mixes all of that into one dish. So stay tuned this week as we do an apple creme brulee tart that's gonna knock your socks off. By the way, be sure to stay to the very end because I want to show you a trick that makes mine different than any other Tarte Normande or apple creme brulee tart you're gonna ever try. Thank you so much and join us today. So the very first step in any tart is to make the dough. We're going to be making a pâte brisée, and you're probably wondering why I'm not making like a sugar dough to make this. You could if you want to. I just find there's enough sweetness in the dessert already. That's why I'm going to make it with just a plain kind of pie crust dough. So we're going to start with 12 ounces of all-purpose flour. Now 12 ounces is about 2.5 cups, and we just put that in our food processor. We're going to be putting about half a teaspoon of baking powder. All right, about half a teaspoon of salt. And whenever I make pastries, I always add just a little bit of salt. You know, you need it just to bring out the flavors a little more. Now we're just going to process this for 1 second just to kind of mix up all the ingredients. You're not looking for any more than just that. Now we're going to be adding 8 ounces of cold butter. And what I usually do is dice the butter up in small pieces like this. That way it's going to incorporate into the dough a little bit quicker. We're just going to add that all in there. And then we're going to pulse this till it looks like coarse cornmeal. You know, it's really about 20 seconds of pulsing. And that's it. So now the butter, there's not any chunks of butter. They're all incorporated in, but you didn't beat it for too long. And now we're going to add about 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of ice cold water. You just want to just enough to make the dough form into a ball. That's all we're looking for. So turn the motor on. And then we're just going to slowly pour in the water. All right. That's it. All right. Look at that dough. Came together as a ball. That was pretty quick, maybe 20 seconds of running the motor with the water. Now we're going to let this dough refrigerate for about an hour or so to let the gluten relax. So now we're going to prep our apples. I like to use a Granny Smith or another cooking apple. They seem to hold up better during the process. And so we're going to cut the top and the bottom off. And you could save all these pieces. I like to make sauces out of them. I really hate wasting things. Anyways, we're going to cut the apple into quarters right through the stem. And then we're going to cut straight down and remove the core. And then you can just peel the backside in 3 even cuts. And then I just like to cut the apple either in 2 or into 3. So what I'm looking for is big slices like that, because we really want it to like stand up and be noticed. So once again, we're going to cut the core out and then do just 3 cuts on the backside. And we'll cut these in half. So next we have to caramelize our apples. And we're just going to turn our burner on. We're going to put about 3 tablespoons or so of butter in the pan. We're just going to let that melt real quick. And I like to use a big enough pan so the apples cook more quickly, evenly, and in one layer. Because if you do it in a smaller pan, you might have to work in batches. Otherwise, the apples will stew a little bit more, then they'll brown. And what we're looking for is a nice brown color to the apples when we're done. Right, so when the butter's melted, we're just going to add about 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. And you really don't even need to let this melt right now. Now we can just add our apples. And I would continue cooking over high heat. This is going to take probably about 5 minutes. The apples have cooked for about 3, 4, 5 minutes now. And you can see they have a nice golden color. You got to remember to turn them often, because otherwise you'll get too dark of a caramel. I'm just going to turn this down now to real low. And I'm going to zest an orange on top. And what I like about adding an orange, so this is not typical in the Tarte Normande, but what I like is it adds a little bright flavor to it and kind of sweet, cuts the sweetness that you're going to find in the dish. And even if you wanted, you could cut the orange in half, squeeze a little bit of the juice in there, and just give it a little bit more of a citrusy flavor. We're also going to add about 1/2 teaspoon or so of cinnamon, and then I'm going to add just 1/4 teaspoon of, you could use mace or cloves, whatever you like. Any of the baking spices are just awesome in here. Let's just give that a little stir. Oh, it's going to be great. You know, when you stir, try to be very delicate, because the apples are very fragile at this point. All right, now let's let this cool off and I'll show you the next step. Now it's time to roll the dough out. So preferably use a big rolling pin that's got bearings, you know, with the handles that twist. It's just easier. You could use a French pin if you wanted to. When you take it out of the fridge, the butter is going to be hard, so I always bang it just a little bit, get my aggressions out. And then I would say that this dough is you're probably going to have about 1/3 left over when you're all done. So don't be dismayed, just save it and use it for something else. You know, you can make a bigger tart if you wanted to. It also makes it a lot easier to roll it out. And you want to be sure to put a little bit of flour down on your counter and also on top of your dough, because the last thing you want is your dough to stick. All right, let's give this guy a little flip. All right. Now once you got it rolled out to about 1/8 of an inch, we're just going to roll it over the pin. Put our tart pan underneath, and then just roll it very loosely back over. Then we're going to just push it down, lift the dough by the edges, and then just push it down into the corners. All right. All right, and then once you get it over the edges, just kind of squeeze it in around the sides. And all of this is to help it so when it cooks, it doesn't shrink down. I like to pinch it really good on the rim. And then I want to show you a trick that I do. I'm going to take a knife. Now, a lot of people will cut the dough off at the top, right here, and then they'll put aluminum foil. They'll let this rest first, and then they'll put aluminum foil in and bake it with little beans inside. I don't like to do that. What I like to do instead is leave a bit of the dough hanging over. So we're gonna leave about 1/2 inch hanging over. And remember, we've pinched it onto the edge. Now take your excess dough, leave that just pinched just like this. Take your excess dough and you can just put that back in the bag, put it in the freezer and pull it out next time you want to make a tart, and it's going to be delicious. Now we're going to take this tart shell and we're going to put this in the refrigerator for 30 minutes right now. And once again, this is just to help prevent the dough from shrinking down on the sides. I just pulled the tart out. It's been in the oven for about 15 minutes, and if you see, it's really nicely lightly brown. While it's hot, I just take a rolling pin and just cut along the top, and then I'll spin it. And I'll cut along the top there. And then this excess dough will pull off. And what you have is a perfectly even top. You didn't have to deal with that whole thing with baking beans, the whole mess of that, lifting it out, burning yourself, etc. And you have this beautiful tart shell. Now we're going to take our caramelized apple slices and just put them in a circle going around. You know, it's funny, every time I make this, I always think like, man, like 6 apples is way too many. And then it never ceases to amaze me that that's actually probably the right amount. They just cook down a lot. We're going to take our filling and we're just going to pour this over. You just want to do it carefully and make sure it gets all over the place. And you want to keep an eye on the filling. You don't want it to get up too high. You do have to move this to the oven. But there we go, perfectly filled. I'm gonna pop this in the oven, 400 degrees, and we're just gonna cook it till the filling is set. I don't know, I'm gonna guess right now about 20 minutes, but I'll put the correct time that it actually took me today in the description. So let's take this tart out of its tart shell. I'm gonna slide it over. It takes some kind of sturdy container you can put the tart on. This is the easiest way to get it out of the shell. All right, we're just gonna let this guy drop like that. And there you have it. You have the creme brulee tart. Oh my God, it smells so good. There's something about apples and cinnamon. You know, now the bonus thing you could do if you wanted to is sprinkle a thin layer of sugar over the top, and I would just use granulated sugar, and then take a propane torch and caramelize it like you would a creme brulee.